Well, ladies and gentlemen, can you believe it? It is time to actually start the Housing Transformation Summit, the fall event of 2024. I'm Tim Costello, and I'm going to be your track host. So I'm going to actually be the one consistent thing across all 5 of these structures and system summits. I will be here. The cast of characters that you see up here will be changing depending on our subject. And I'm going to give you a little background into kind of how this is going to operate. Like I said, there are 5 sessions. This is the very first of all of those sessions. This section is going to be on kind of energy efficiency and sustainability and resilience. We're going to get together then tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, and breakfast will be served here. It'll be served right in the rooms. We're going to talk about kind of electrical issues, switches, outlets, innovation, all kinds of paradigm shifts in the way we use electricity in our homes. And then we're going to talk about designing and building with advanced materials and material systems. So kind of each one of these sessions is kind of a different take on some of the innovations that are taking place in how we build homes. And then Thursday morning for breakfast, we'll be back here talking about systems innovation, both in water systems as well as energy systems. And we'll wrap it up at lunch and then on Thursday, talking about how do we actually market and sell all these innovations? Because, you know, you go to a conference like this, you see all kinds of ideas and go, yeah, you know, but how are we going to get paid for it? How are we going to get our consumers, you know, to buy into this? So we're going to wrap all this up with an incredible industry professional in the marketing space that's going to talk about how we actually get the value out of what we build. So Chris, you're not in that panel, but you may want to sneak your way back and listen to that. So she's really great. I've heard her many times. I think that will be a really nice kind of capstone on all these. So these 5 events will all be in this room. Session format, pretty simple. There's kind of 1 to 3 subject matter experts in each one of these things. Sometimes Jennifer at the very end is 1 subject matter expert. Some of the other panels have 3, some have 2. They're going to kind of give short presentations, little 10, 15, 20-minute type presentations. We then have a couple of builder panelists up here. Today, we have 2 builder panelists up here that will kind of share their views and experience of the content as well. And we will then, of course, break down into a broader discussion and Q&A with the entire audience. The group discussion Q&A will be anywhere from kind of 15, 20 minutes, depending on the amount of content that we have. And then you got 1 moderator up here to keep this train on schedule. And that is my job, to kind of keep this on schedule. And we'll do our best to make sure that you get out of here and we start on time and we get through all this. So let me introduce the first section. It is Structures and Systems session on energy efficiency and sustainability and resilience. You know, I'm going to tee this up, first of all, introducing our audience here. We got Scott Sumetz from GAF Energy, but I'm really GAF, you know. And if you haven't been introduced to GAF lately, you know, I know if you're an old school person, you go, oh yeah, they make roofing shingles. Well, they're a lot more than roofing shingles. It's really about kind of, I would say, roofing systems, and how roofing systems play in a home. And if you're going, what the heck's a roofing system compared to, you know, well, Scott's going to enlighten you on some of that kind of stuff, because they do a lot more than just protect a home these days. We also have Gregg down at the end of the table. Oh, whoop, no, we don't. Over here. Wait a minute. Where'd Roger go?
Big guy.
Shoot. Roger right next to me down here with Johns Manville. Of course, Johns Manville has a variety of different products that deal with kind of the structure and sustainability and the energy efficiency of a home, from insulation products, siding products, all kinds of different things like that. But Roger's going to talk a bit about that. Then we got a couple of different builders. We've got Yannick, who hails all the way from Canada. And he's going to talk a little bit, you know, not formally, but he'll introduce himself in Dvele, which is kind of a manufactured housing concept, or modular housing concept. And then we have Lorenz from Classica Homes, which I would say is more of a traditional builder, a stick frame built builder of homes in the US. So they'll be commenting on all this. You know, the timing for this discussion, you know, in my view, really couldn't be better. It used to be that we poked fun at people who lived in California because they had earthquakes. And everybody else in the country says, not here. We live in bucolic America where nothing bad happens. But if you listen to the news lately, what we recognize is that we're kind of being besieged everywhere. If you're in the West, you got earthquakes, you got fires. If you're in the South, you've got, floods and winds and hurricanes. If you're in the Midwest, we've got floods and tornadoes. If you're in the East, now we have flooding and we have coastal hurricanes as well. I don't think anybody thought that Eastern Tennessee or Western, North Carolina was probably, subject to the kinds of floods and hurricane damage that we saw in the last hurricane. And, we're kind of getting impinged everywhere. And if you look at fire damage, everybody has always looked to California and some of the areas, in Northern California that are, heavily forested, and you have these bucolic little villages that are kind of tucked into very dense forest, and you get large forest fires and they have forest fires damage. I don't think anybody thought that suburban Denver was necessarily in the heart of forest fire land, but we lost over 1,000 homes. We lost businesses, shopping malls. There was a Target store destroyed in Denver because of wildfire. So building for resilience, building for sustainability in today's world is really becoming kind of more shocking. Of course, we saw this play out in Lahaina with over 2,000 different buildings destroyed and 100 people killed. And all of this is beginning to lead to an insurance crisis, which is going to really affect the affordability of homes and the ability of homeowners to even buy and maintain and own a home. And I think for us as builders, we're going to have to start to build homes that are insurable. And we may get to a point where there are insurable homes and there are not insurable homes. And if we can start to differentiate that, and if we as builders can start to build homes that are insurable because they're more sustainable, have better materials, they survive fires and winds and floods better than the existing used housing stock, then we have incredible pricing power and we have incredible opportunity to sell into those markets. So I think it's a really big opportunity. While it's scary on the one end, I think we are in an era where you might actually start to see a differentiation in home insurance markets between new homes and used homes, and that would benefit us dramatically. So in the future, I think we're gonna have to talk about how we can make our structures more water resistant, wind resistant, hurricane resistant, disaster resistant, et cetera. And there are builders out there that are already beginning to do this. A couple of different kind of examples of that is Hunters Point, which is a community in Florida. It is a completely self-sustained, again, hardened community. And I love this map that came from the Disaster Relief Agency of Cortez, Florida. This is their disaster relief map of damaged, and there's Hunter Point that said, oh, safe, nothing happened here. There is no debris. The homes are all livable. The people are still living in 100% of all the homes in the community. So if you're a builder and you're marketing homes, that's marketable. You can get expanded margins in what you sell if you're selling that kind of product. And you look at this and go, well, that's one area of Florida. Look, Florida is, this is all of Florida. Okay, this is coastal Carolinas, this is the coastal US, this is Louisiana, this is the Texas coast. This is a much larger area of the country that we've seen. So there's some really interesting inroads, being made in this area. And there's some big builders beginning to do some really interesting things. This is being driven specifically by Sekisui House, which is now one of the top 10 builders in the United States. They own brands like Richmond American and Woodside Homes, Chesmar, Holt, et cetera. But they come from a completely different background on housing and housing innovation and science. They have complete earthquake shake tables, 2 of them in Japan, where they build full-size homes that you can see there. They put them on earthquake shake tables and they shake them to make sure there's 0 damage. So they're using a ceramic siding product that looks like brick, taking them to level 7 and 8 hurricanes, magnitude 7 and 8 earthquakes, and their specification is no exterior structural damage to the home at all going through a magnitude 8 earthquake. And that building system is now coming to the United States through their involvement in all these large builders. So we're starting to see some real changes, with respect to kind of the products that we have and our approach to resilience and how we can build homes. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Gregg of John Manville, and he's going to start talking to us about what John Manville can do to help you with resilience.
Outstanding. So resilience is when you've started your company 164 years ago and you're still building and manufacturing product. That's about how long we've been in business.
Probably helps that you're a Berkshire Hathaway company.
Right, but that only happened like 22 years ago, after the great asbestos crisis. But I digress. I would, you brought up Sakaiza House. That's how I say it. You said it the right way. I'm very intimate with Richmond American Homes specifically. So, and they are doing some innovative things, and they're looking at some innovative things. So hopefully in the Q&A that will come back up again. Who am I? I run national accounts for the new residential channel for the United States, single family, multifamily, manufactured housing. I live in a bucolic horse ranch in Montana. We had a huge fire just last year, right next to our house. So we live this dream. When we take a look at it, it's specifically what we're going to kind of touch on today. I'm going to try to weave into some of the things that we were just talking about here. But really, so much of today's deal is we're all plugging along, we're building homes, we're doing stuff, and then all of a sudden, from an acceleration standpoint, energy codes get on steroids. And part of that, and the easiest way to address that, one of the easiest ways, is through increased insulation. And then a little bit at the end about best practices and some new products. Not quite as innovative as the ceramic piece that we were just talking about, or Tim was just talking about. So that's basically what we're gonna do. But I'm a frustrated economist, okay? Whenever I have builders in the same room, I sit on a couple of NAHB boards, very close to Dr. Dietz, their chief economist. But I wanna talk about, hey, when you look at building your home, it's ultimately about money in this whole equation. The single family builders, the new folks, were given a little bit of a gift when interest rates went up a little bit to a certain degree because they were able to buy down interest rates. And if you take a look at this time last year, the market was at 34% of every home purchase was a new home.
Highest percentage in the history of recorded.
And it just slid back to 28. So those folks that were sitting on the 3% and under interest rates are now like, hey, we got to move, honey, or whatever their relationship is. So the interest rate issue cuts both ways, though, because if you're not a publicly traded builder, a whole bunch of your money comes from regional banks. Regional banks are not a good place right now. So my heart goes out to you. Low housing stock, depending on what you want to read, there's 3 to 4 million homes that need to be built. Not happening right now. And they need to be built the right way, too. And then, the third one up there is really the land and development costs have gone up as more regulations come in there. It's been very, very difficult. I sit on one of the NAHB boards that we're trying to address this at the congressional and the DC area to try to remove some of this pre-tax that you all have to pay before you can actually go build the house. And then, the consumer demand, the consumer, I think we need to be able to tell that story of the new innovative stuff. But ultimately, the energy efficiency piece it's probably the easiest one to go ahead and address. And by that, you get a twofer. If you invest in the Energy Star aspect of the house, you're going to pay lower utility bills. Can I just see everybody's hands up? Who paid less this year than last year on your utility bills at any level? Gas, electric, whatever. Anybody? No. It's only going up. So this becomes even more important. And then obviously the home buyer recognizes that and rewards those homes in the resale market to say, hey, it's an energy efficient home. So then how do we go ahead and address that? Right now, not counting the reduced amount of utility costs, if you put $1 into an Energy Star piece, you're basically getting $3 back on the house. And the easiest way to do that is with insulation. Now, we're going through the political season. Hopefully everybody here voted today somehow, some way. I know I did mine early.
I voted 12 times.
And so did my dead relatives.
Just kidding, okay?
No, but I mean, it's just been an onslaught of you did this and you did that, and I don't really care. I'm not addressing who you voted for by any stretch, but we get caught in that as well. And there's been, hey, the reason house prices went from, 325 to 447 is because, this energy efficiency stuff. Well, HUD did a big, huge study and survey, and it's $7,200 a home, okay, on average across America on the International Energy Conservation Code and getting to that Energy Star piece that's out there. So we're not the ones driving that up by any stretch. But to help out with that, and it's a little bit oxymoronic, the government in DC said, hey, let's do an Inflation Reduction Act. They carved some money out. They put it in the Energy Star. They created a program called 45L, which gives you $2,500 to $5,000 back a home. Me being with a lot of the Hortons and Lennars and Pulte's and NVRs of the world, there was a pretty good metric to say, hey, if we're already 80% there, that little stretch to get there is absolutely worth it. Okay, and the easiest way to do that, obviously, is through us, through HVAC, through windows, and a couple other things. But on top of that, the states, a lot of the different states out there, also rewarding that. So now it became very lucrative for a whole bunch of the single-family and multifamily folks to go do. And then the utilities, and I'm just using Maryland, North Carolina, Oklahoma, and Pennsylvania as an example. They're also participating in this. But what's becoming more important is I gave you that 80% rule. Like, hey, if we're already 80% there, you know what, we'll go do it. Well, now that home buyers' expectations, because of this momentum, similar to what Tim was talking about earlier with some of these products that'll be more sustainable, they're saying, hey, this house needs to have this in there. And so that's kind of the next wave that we're facing right now. So when you take a look at, and I'm not a quantitative analysis mathematics person, so these are one-offs, okay? And by that, what I'm trying to say is that depending on where you start, if you upgrade your insulation, you can make that house 20% more energy efficient, okay? Air sealing, 6%, okay? Windows, 7 to 16. You guys can read this stuff up there. But when you do them all together, it actually goes up by exponents almost. I just don't have that math and I can't figure it out. But what I do know is we're in charge of the envelope in John's Manville. And by the way, we do have the highest share of business in single-family new residential in the U.S. versus our competitors. And I'll give us a bigger plug at the end because I know that's what everybody wants to hear about. But the HVAC's a pretty significant expense to the process. And by doing the envelope, which is never going to change, you're not going to swap out your envelope. Okay, so it's a one and done deal that adds value to that home for forever. But it also can reduce the size and scope of what you need to do from your heating and air conditioning. So what's been happening? So we just said Richmond a minute ago, and I've been very intimate with the Richmond folks, back when I used to work at General Electric for a long time. And they've gone to, for an example, all their walls, instead of using bats and rolls, they have a bib system where they blow in the blowing wool. And that gives them significant, it's about a 25% price increase versus a bat and roll, but it gets them to that Energy Star and does a lot better job of insulating the home. Mineral fiber, that number of 50% is a little high. That was a lot of supply and demand issues. You all not using a ton of that stuff. But spray foam, both open and closed. We're roughly number one in closed cell, but it's a little pricey, 2.5 times the cost of putting fiberglass and other stuff in there. But the open cell, we're a top 5 player. And we talked a little bit about Florida. I can guarantee you that, what was the name of that place you were talking about?
Oh, Hunters Point. Yeah.
Hunters Point has a spray foamed home, specifically in Florida, because first of all, you have that continuous insulation aspect. Allstate actually will give you a discount on your insurance if your home is spray foamed in Florida. So it gives you kind of a contained unit. I'll get to where there's pros and cons, but
that's another huge issue is controlling the air infiltration for the pressure drop during
absolutely.
Tornadoes and hurricanes.
Yeah.
A lot of the Florida homes actually use a pressure management system, but if you have leaks throughout your home, the pressure management systems don't work, so you have to kind of do that.
Well, and I live in the great state of Montana, where last October it was -40 for a week. Okay, so every new home in Montana pretty much has 2 inches of closed cell spray foam and then stuff. So everybody's got to build differently, but again, that gives you that continuous insulation approach. And then air sealing, obviously, uber critical in the process of doing that. So as we take a look at single family, multifamily, what is the actual best way to go ahead and build a home using, my industry's products today? And ultimately it comes down to a hybrid solution. It used to just be, we're using bats and rolls, a little bit of blow on the roof. Today it's, whether it's Horton in Denver or in Dallas or Lennar in Austin, there's spray foam on the roof deck. and then either using, bats and rolls or something else in there. And that's to hit that Energy Star money. But the consumer, the home buyer, is absolutely responding to this. And again, we're going to make a huge investment in spray foam in the near future. We'll announce it down in the Houston marketplace. So as you take a look at that, in the past it was the delta between how expensive that was. If I go back a slide, I can't. But in the last slide, it said, hey, it's about 30% more. Okay, well, it was 50% more. Okay, and so as fiberglass, which obviously we have a lot of fiberglass manufacturing, has gone up, spray foam's gone down. But I've also sat in a meeting with with Stuart, the chairman of the board of Lennar. And so as they're taking a look at this, I'm going to caution everybody here to know that you need to have a backup plan if you do go to spray foam, because depending on who wins this election, everything else, or if there's a war in Taiwan, 80% of the Part A that everybody uses comes across the Pacific. So it's kind of an oil and a gas play. If there's a problem in the Middle East, gas prices can go up. So you've got to be able to switch back and forth. And so if you are going to go one direction, make sure you also have a plan B in that process. In the hybrid system, and I'm not showing it on this, but the other piece that's up double-digit growth the last 2 years is foam board or polyiso. So you can do a spray foam application by using foam boards and tape. And the upside from a technology standpoint is a whole lot of those products, especially ours, actually have not only outstanding R value, but they have a structural component too. So as we're talking about hurricanes and other things, it's not, stucco and chicken wire and some, fiberglass on the other side. You can actually get significant more structure to the homes, as well as, the flood stuff that hit your state and other things. It certainly helps with that as well. So now I got to plug my company because they pay me a pretty decent wage and let me live on a horse ranch in Montana. There's 4 main competitors in our world. There's a whole bunch of ancillary players too, but we're the only ones that actually manufacture all 5 major types of insulating products, okay? From blown-in fiberglass to spray foam to mineral wool to fiberglass to foam boards. We're actually probably the largest manufacturer in the U.S. of polyiso because we have a commercial roofing side that's the industry's largest as well. But with that, we support this with the Johns Manville Tech Center, which happens to be in Littleton, Colorado. It's a world-class R&D facility, and it's got razor wire, and when you go through, the guard has a gun. And you're saying, why would you need that at an R&D facility? Well, we actually have the majority of Department of Defense contracts. So some of our product, when Elon's sending his rockets up there, there's some Johns Manville insulating products in that. Anybody here driven in a tank, submarine? How about an airplane? Every airplane you've ever been on, between you and the outside, that's Johns Manville insulation. So we kind of have like a Toyota racing division, high-tech side to us. It's not just, hey, we use horsehair and something else and insulate your house. I mean, we are on the cutting edge, especially versus our competitors that are out there. And then there's nobody here that hasn't had a question. Holy crap, they just changed the building code. What do I do? Who do I call? How do I do this? Well, we have not just like, and this is not disparaging, but the folks that are in Denver, Colorado, building scientists that answer our telephone, that will either answer straight up or will give you an answer shortly afterwards. So depending on how you're building, how you want to build, creating a value equation and dealing with some of the codes or the Energy Star requirements we talked about for the $2,500 to $5,000, they're absolutely right there. I mean, I can help a little bit, but I'm not going to hold my own against our building science department, but I'm insanely responsive. So if you want to, and I'll give you my information at the end, you can go to me and I'll guide you in the right direction, but we will absolutely answer those questions. And then especially with spray foam, there's a whole lot of health and safety issues because it's the only product that's actually manufactured on the job site. So that contractor becomes much more critical than the folks that are doing regular insulating and regular other products that are on there. Typically you got to wait a day. You don't have to, you could probably wait 20 minutes, but depending on the rules of the county you're building in, there's a whole lot of safety and health issues that are tied to that. We have testing, we just saw the picture of the earthquake stuff. That's exactly the kind of stuff we have at the Johns Manville Tech Center with the hot rooms, the cold rooms. We're absolutely certified to be able to test on fire stuff. Fiberglass doesn't burn, it melts, okay? So, roughly at, 14 to 1800 degrees, depending on what you're using. So we add to that, so it's not, it's not a product that's gonna be combustible. And we do the same with our, our spray foam and our polyiso product and the rest of it.
I live in Texas, and it seems like our temperature is getting close to that melting point.
Well, they invented heat there. Yeah. I mean, you and Phoenix, where our other buddy lives,
Exactly.
I mean, that's, we invented cold where I live. So, from our standpoint, a whole bunch of you using our product. I want to say thank you. Those that aren't, figure it out or don't talk to me. No, I'm just joking. But, our goal is just to grow our business together across the board. There's my information right there. I can point and answer any question or get back to you on anything.
So before we move to Scott and start talking about roof systems, totally different part of the house, I'd love to get back to Yannick and to Chris. And he talked a lot about building envelopes and changing kind of our whole approach to the building envelope. That it's not just about look, I remember building homes, right? It was simple. Right? You build a frame home and you stunk a bunch of fiberglass in the walls and you put some drywall over it. Nobody ever saw what was behind the wall, and you were good to go. It's kind of not the way it is anymore. I was wondering what the two of you have done over the course of the last 5 years and kind of transitioning to thinking about that building envelope and how you create kind of a more robust system.
Well, we've been doing it for a while. Just the energy efficiency, air sealing the house. We do an upgraded window with argon in it for energy efficiency. We use a good house wrap.
Do you do full HERS testing of your homes, or
all Energy Star, all HERS, HERS rating, and there are utility rebates and the 45L, which offset a lot of those costs. So we've found value in it for a long time. In a previous builder, we had issues before we got into air changes and we started sealing the house up tighter.
Yep.
And we had actually having mold in the house because we had oil-based paint.
Yep.
And the house wrap we were using was very permeable. So in our climate, basically we had a vapor drive going into the house because the houses were negatively pressurized because we had these 1200 CFM fans sucking air out of the house. Where's the air coming from? So this was before the downturn, the 2006, 2008.
Those are tough lessons to learn as a builder.
Yeah, and so people did not figure things out, and basically building a house is it's science. You can't just do. If you're going to do foam insulation, you're going to air seal the house. You have to take everything into consideration, and climate. I guess one of the things Montana is very cold. Florida is very hot and humid. Phoenix is hot and dry.
I think this issue of systems engineering and the need to elevate, whether it's the envelope of the home or the roof system, et cetera. In the past, we didn't really view it as systems. We viewed it as we bought components and we assembled them. And I think we've entered an age of systems engineering. I think the challenge is, as builders, where do we get the help? Where are the experts that are going to help us with that systems engineering climate by climate?
Right, you have to pay attention to climate because the house wrap, I won't name any names, the house wrap we were using was highly permeable, which in our climate, it's hot, humid, layer wants to go into the cold, dry. So you don't really want a lot of permeability.
You should help these people out and tell who it was. Make the same mistake.
But in my opinion, that house wrap would be great up north because it's it's warm and moist inside. It's so you got to pay attention to your climate and where you are, and then now you got your energy raters, that are specific companies that are doing the energy rating and modeling your houses and checking it out and figuring out what to do. And even with the new codes, the Energy Star is now increasing, so you have to go up to another level to get the 45L. And so we're debating, is it worth the cost? To do all that, to get that tax credit, and we're already doing a lot, but we're like, all right, it's going to cost us twice as much it's going to cost $5,000 a house to get $2,500 worth of
Think you
credit.
can help them out, maybe reduce that?
No,
There we go.
3.2.
We've made a connection here already. This is great. Right up here on the panel.
3.1 and 3.2 Energy Star.
Yes.
We're good. 3.2 is the same as 3.1 in my world. So what I provide you, the insulation and the boards.
Yeah. But all the other
It's all the other stuff.
It's all the other
Yeah, so I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah, you're
All right. Yeah.
Have you played around with spray foam at all within your traditional building?
We don't. I mean, I've done it in the past, but we currently are not doing it. But if I see the value, I think because we air seal everything up,
Using traditional caulks?
using traditional caulks and house wrap and everything, and we're getting great HERS ratings. So there's certain costs to that, and so we aren't doing that. But we look at, like I said, the windows. We do the radiant barrier on the on the roof, to help with that.
Yannick, you have a completely different, kind of challenge in that you build homes, right, in a controlled manufacturing environment.
Correct.
What's your approach to kind of the whole envelope?
So we used to use a combination of, for example, the batt insulation and then the polyiso on the outside. We've completely moved away from batt insulation because at least in our manufacturing process, it slows us down. So we're actually just increasing that thickness on the outside. And it allows us to purchase more of the same product essentially, and buying in volume, which we're doing, increases our R
So
value.
you end up then with a complete thermal break, though, also between your structure and the outside, because it's all on the outside.
Yeah.
What's in your wall cavity then? Do you have anything?
Nope, just MEP services essentially, yeah.
Right.
But it's actually helping us out because now all of our manufacturers or all of our factory workers now have more room to work with, and they're not too worried about it's going to be filled in with insulation later on.
Yeah, a lot of times the insulation that you put back after you do that stuff, it's not really put back.
No, exactly. It's on the manufacturing. I mean, if you try to do a batt insulation and then ship your panels and put it.
You get a lot
It's
of,
not going to stay.
you get settling. You also get settling, which is huge problem with transportation.
Yeah, and then we air seal everything as well. But as of right now with the panels, it seems to work fairly fast because we can work on the inside and on the outside both at the same time. And then we have to, like you mentioned, no thermal bridging in between the actual studs and the outside of the building.
Very interesting. All right, Scott, why don't you take us up top, so to speak, on the roof?
Sexy stuff to talk about.
Sexy stuff.
Sexy stuff.
We actually see his.
No, I'm excited to be here. And
I know. Speaking of Scott and sexy, kind of scares the heck.
yeah, that's exactly where it's established.
Okay.
Well, it was a great presentation. I really appreciate everybody in this room and the fact that everybody that's here is trying to become more efficient, right? Trying to become more conservation minded, trying to build just a darn better house. And I think the industry deserves that. And so, I applaud everybody that's here. We look at it a little bit, from a different angle, right? The roof, right? So we are on the front line of home protection. We talked about the fires and putting all that together. And so
Wind, everything. Rain, fire, you're everything.
So I think the number one insurance claim that's out there is right through the roof. So we take pride in developing products at GAF that are resilient, that are strong, that are energy efficient, and that also now produce energy, which is a different. So when they asked to speak, it was like there's this conservation part of it on the roof, but there's also this production part that's kind of newer. And so it's really a great combination to have, and excited to be here. A little bit about myself. Again, I'm Director of Enterprise Sales at GAF Energy. I've been in the solar space for about 14 years. So I have spent a lot of my career on the front line working with consumers and making sure that it makes sense to go solar, looking at it from a holistic approach. A couple of the things that are interesting to note about rack-mounted solar. So we differentiate ourselves. Rack-mounted solar bolts onto the roof. And in the first 10 years of the solar business, I would say going back to like 2008, solar companies and integrators would go out into the public, and they would just put solar, as much solar as they can on the house, forgetting about the conservation part, forgetting about the insulation, forgetting about the other things. And so all of this stuff.
But a lot of that industry is because it was working on used homes.
That's right.
Your home's already built. It's already an energy hog.
That's right.
So now you're just going out there trying to put a ton of solar on it versus building an integrated system. Let me ask a question real quick to the audience. How many of the builders out there today offer rack-mounted solar as an option on your homes? So you're talking about very few, maybe 4 or 5, only 4 or 5 of all these buildings. Anybody offering integrated solar roofing, either like the Tesla roof, solar, or GAF, nobody. So, I think the issue with that whole thing is this market's wide open. This is in its infancy still.
Yeah. So I think we have to start, how did we get here? I think that's kind of the starting point here. Standard Industries, we're a private, global industrial company. Our whole process here is building world-class building solutions and performance materials. So that's what we've done. One of our biggest, we're the number one waterproofer in the world, if you think about all of our companies combined throughout the countries. GAF has been a well-known brand, in the roofing shingle space for years. And you talked about 165 years. GAF, 135 years in the business. So again, we go back to these cornerstones of building and material science that go back a generation. And we are the leading roofing and waterproofing manufacturer in North America. 1 in 4 homes out in the US are protected by a GAF roof. So just to give you context of the size and scope, it is our job, if we're doing it right, to make sure that we're conserving, how we conserve, and then can we produce power from the roof. Timberline Solar was created by Standard Industries and the folks at GAF as the first, world-class nailable solar shingle. We've won a bunch of awards, about 35 awards. I think one of the important components here is this is developed and assembled in California and in Texas. So this product is made stateside, and you can't say that about a lot of the rack-mounted solar folks. So I think that's a great advantage.
Well, I think the other thing is, the Texas plant, I think you opened last year or earlier this year, I can't remember, it wasn't that long ago.
Yep.
It's a gargantuan facility with huge volume. So this is no longer kind of this little esoteric boutique, product where, we can do 1,000 homes a year.
Yeah.
I mean, GF's made a real commitment now to make this a mainstream roofing product.
Yeah, and I think that's an important note to talk about. The solar industry in today's market, we talked about interest rates, we talked about, the scope of building, and the higher interest rates are affecting a lot of different, solar metrics, right, as we look at that. And so the investment that our co-CEOs and Standard Industries had in this business is giving folks and builders kind of a safe harbor to be able to look at the investments that we're making today are for the next 20 years. We're not going to come in and out of business. We've been in business for a long time. We're privately held. And a lot of the solar, unfortunately, is subject to interest rate environments, Wall Street expectations. As a private organization, we don't have that. And so I think that's a great foundation to build in a choppy business that's solar right now. And I think just to give context for that manufacturing plant, we can produce about 50,000 systems annually. So think about 50,000 homes that have a 5 kilowatt system nationally.
And that's, in general, we build 800,000, plus or minus homes a year in the new home market, right? Yeah. If you're doing 50,000, you're talking about 7% of all the homes in the United States. New home builds could be supplied by this one plant.
Yeah.
It's really significant.
Yeah, it's great. So how did we get here? I think, a couple things. I think the homeowner demand is changing. More and more solar, customers are wanting solar. Now, of course, in California, it's mandated that all new construction have solar on their homes. And so that is kind of a foothold and started this sort of migration, what I call from west to east, where now we're starting to see one of the biggest master plan communities in Colorado, Sterling Ranch, is required to offer solar. And again, that's the number one selling market in Colorado for a master plan community 3 years in a row. So the consumers are buying homes with solar. They want that idea to generate power, and I'll get to a few slides of why. But that demand is really flowed over into our roofer population. So what happens is in the GAF family, we have about 8,000 roofers in our network. And those roofers would go out and they would actually be repairing roofs, and folks would say, hey, what about solar? I have 2 guys in a truck solar that would come over and put a panel through a brand new shingled roof and void the warranty. So our roofing population talked and we listened, and they basically said, hey, can you guys create something that is a solar product that installs and protects like a roof, but is actually doesn't void the warranties.
I mean, it is interesting. I've had a net zero solar home for 20 years, right? Haven't paid a utility bill for over a decade. So, but it is the antithesis of what you believe, which is you never put a hole in your roof. And, you know, in the first part of traditional solar is you go out there, you start drilling a bunch of holes in your roof, and it just kind of scares the heck out of you. You know, what am I doing here, right? Taking this perfect waterproof seal type thing, and I'm starting to put all these penetrations in it. It does give you pause.
Yeah, and let me just say, I am a solar advocate through and through, right? And so we didn't reinvent the solar system. We reinvented the way it attaches to the roof. And part of the reason I came over from the rack-mounted side to the GAF Energy side is it just is a better play. I managed the Costco and Home Depot relationships for Sunrun, the largest integrator, prior to coming here. And the amount of calls that I had from leaky roofs, it's simply something that we haven't, in the industry, haven't quite wrestled with yet. And so this is the first step of that. Builders are incorporating energy conservation and production into the homes. That's why we're all here. We're learning about various products. And I think, the builders are starting to really see the advantage of incorporating not only conservation, but the production, and that's that solar piece, whether required and mandated, or whether codes changing like Washington State, or throughout the country.
And there's a really interesting data point in Austin, Texas, last summer, because Austin has an interesting buyback market.
Yes.
And people were making $180 per day selling energy back to the utility company. Mm-hmm. So if they had solar production, they could actually sell it back into the grid. Some had battery storage in addition to that, right?
Yeah.
But when you start talking about the economics of home ownership, if your home can start making you $180 a day, your mortgage becomes really cheap, really fast.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's exactly right. And I think that gives us to this next slide, which I really like, is let's rethink this building envelope of a home. Let's rethink every aspect of the home. And as the leader in the space on the roofing side, let's rethink what that looks like. It is the best, building system for energy and for conservation and generation, right? And so it's no longer just a passive piece of real estate that's sitting up there doing nothing. It's interesting. We are just scratching the surface of what's possible. We were at a sales conference last week, and we were talking to the co-CEOs, and there's like the possibilities of what's next in the protection of shingle market is endless. Think about Wi-Fi, think about cell phone within the shingle itself. I mean, there's all kinds of forward-thinking stuff that we can think through that that's possible.
It's kind of like we're going through almost a transition of phases where roofs used to actually, it was great if they did nothing, but they didn't do nothing. They were actually an amazing radiant absorber.
Correct.
That was then pushing all that heat into our homes.
Correct.
Which then made us buy more insulation and upgrade our HVAC systems and caused a huge energy cycle. We got smarter about that, of how could shingles become radiant reflectors.
That's right.
And not absorb as much. And we could build better roof systems. And now we're entering a new generation, which is not only do they not do anything, no, now they actually do something positive. Correct. And can they actually be net power generators, to the system and to the homeowner?
Yeah. No, that's exactly right. And talk about conservation first. The GAF Timberline HDZ Cool Series, right? It's that Energy Star rated, and that's that's our first step at let's reflect that sun, right? Let's not absorb it. Let's reflect it. And then of course we have the poly-ISO. You talked about that, right? And so we have that as well. And obviously then from the production side, the GAF Timberline Solar. We also have a new product that's coming out, Timber Steel. Talk about resilience. That thing it's a metal roof, and it looks like a kind of a shingle roof. So all kinds of really cool stuff.
Is that your first metal product for GAF?
I believe it is. Yeah.
Because everything's been asphalt to date, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
it is. So, okay, so let's talk a little bit about the economics, because why, our tagline is energy from every roof. Why? Why is conservation and generation so important? Look at the economics of this. So, if you look at the fuel costs, and you don't have to be a rocket scientist to sit here and say things over time go up, especially over the last few years, right? So this inflation of fuel cost nationally. So from 21 to 22, 34% increase in fuel costs nationally. That is just unsustainable if that continues, right? So let's think about long term. Now all of a sudden, we have a utility bill, and that's continuing to go up. And so what it's actually doing is threatening affordable home ownership. folks are saving money to get into the house. The house price is going a little bit higher. Then they get into the house, and now, as you can see, consumer demand in the average American pays about $429 per month for their utility bill. That is the second or third largest bill that they're going to have outside of the mortgage. And so what about this? How do we get that lower? And that's through conservation, that's through insulation, that's through, products that reflect the roof on, reflect the sun from the roof.
I've been in the solar industry a long time as well, in the housing and stuff. And it used to be that solar energy, you would consider it kind of a liberally minded product.
Yeah.
I mean, you would sell it to people that were green adopters, environmentally sensitive. That was the early market.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is when you actually go out there, you find out that there's also an incredibly strong market for the diametrically opposite kind of profile, which is people that don't like increasing utility costs, right? It's nothing to do with green. It has nothing to do with environment. It has to do with economics, right? And money. It's about the fact that they kind of want to shove it to the utility company. They want to be independent. They want to have a fixed cost and know that for the rest of their life, they know what their fixed cost is and they don't have increasing energy prices. So you kind of look at the total market and go, we can serve all of it, but we've got to be great storytellers. And the challenge is on the marketing side. You can't use the same story for each inbound customer. We've got to be we've got to be good listeners, and we're going to learn a lot about that in our 5th session on Friday of how do we really do value-added selling. And the biggest part of value-added is first listening to figure out who those customers are, and then how we position the product for them so that it works for them.
Yeah.
Well, I'm personally sold, so.
Good. I like it. Hey, I've done my job then, right? Yeah, there you go.
Montana, I'm your man.
Here's a pen.
There you go.
Sign the contract.
Sign the contract.
That's all good. Sorry.
I think, everybody in this room, I mean, again, I skipped the aging electrical grid cost, but again, $20 trillion to keep up with demand through 2050. This grid that we're all attached to is dilapidating, and it needs infrastructure built into it. And that is a huge component of energy efficiency, is not only just the conservation, let's get energy down, but also everything is going electric. And so now you're starting to see more use of this grid, and distributed generation is great for the grid, but it's only one part. And that's that solar piece where it can fit in, but the bills are going to continue to rise over time. So
I just gave a talk at a conference around kind of futurism and disruptive technology.
Yeah.
And my number one message to them it was a chart on electrical usage. And if you just model the electrical usage coming from crypto and AI, it outpaces all demand in the United States.
Wow.
So just look at that. So when you sit here and go, well, maybe electrical rates aren't going to go up that much in the future. Oh no, look, we can create such anxiety and fear in our consumer buying market that they will need to make this decision to be independent. And the data is all out there. I mean, it's really shocking. I mean, you've seen the announcements of 3 Mile Island getting restarted by Microsoft because they can't find energy. And look, that's just one of dozens and dozens of different projects out there. And that's going to put a lot of pressure on utility rates and energy rates, which means they're going to go up at even higher paces in the future. So it bodes really well for us to double down on energy production in the home.
Correct. Yeah, that's great. Builder advantages, we talked about the 45L and up to the 5,000 per unit. I think my message here is, I wanted to keep this fairly top line. Energy Star and DOE Zero Energy Ready. The good thing, right? Inflation Reduction Act extended this, through 2032. But also this Zero Energy Ready, it has to be, photovoltaic or solar ready is one of the components that has to be there. And my question for the group is, why stop there? Why stop at being ready? Why wire the house for pre-sound? Why not just put the speakers in and sell a better home? The consumers are wanting it. And we've done some surveying, and about 20% after a home community is done, about 20% of the public go and put aftermarket bolt-on solar and void the warranties and put a bunch of lag bolts in their beautiful roof, and now it's not waterproof anymore. So 20% of the population after a community is done is putting in solar. The demand is there. How do we bring this to a building envelope to where it is part of the build cycle?
Well, and then integrated in the mortgage instead of having consumer credit.
Correct.
which is how a lot of these systems are bought. And it's actually the consumer credit that ruins the economics. It's not the solar that ruins the economics. It's the credit that you have to get afterwards if you don't put it in the mortgage.
That's right.
Yeah, I was talking to Kevin Clayton the other day, who was the CEO of Clayton Homes. And, they've made a lot of commitments recently to making 100% of their manufactured product, zero energy ready.
Yeah.
And I was congratulating him. I've known him for a long time. And he goes, it's just the right thing to do. We build homes for the most marginal, in our entire population. And if anybody deserves to have low energy bills, it's them.
Yeah.
And that response was just so touching to me that he just felt it was their moral responsibility to offer those that have the least in our society the ability to live comfortably and yet at the lowest cost.
Yeah, and I wanted to mention that because I think this is really important, especially for the mod house or the manufactured housing. Affordable home ownership is getting scarce. They're on the front line. Kevin Clayton's on the front line of changing that. Some of their houses that they're building now, they're beautiful, right? But they still don't have that. Solar used to be, again, 14 years, solar used to be this, luxury item, and no longer it is. And so from the manufactured house, the beautiful thing about the product that you can kind of see here, it's lightweight. It weighs about 10 pounds. So you don't have to beef up the trusses. So you don't have snow load you have to worry about. You don't have all these additional things. The manufactured housing industry loves this product because it can travel down the road and be set on a site. Miami-Dade certified, right? 175 miles.
You may need to go to Knoxville and talk to Kevin.
Exactly, we do.
We're going to do that.
We definitely do. But I think, to that point, he's right. It's not about getting into the house. It's how do you afford, groceries and raising your family. And if you can take a little bit of control off that, and you have a really well-built house, and then you can produce your own power for the next 25 years, the return on investment comes pretty quick. So,
awesome.
Boom.
Well, let's talk again back to Chris and Yannick. First of all, do either of your companies offer integrated solar, even whether it's bolt-on or integrated into the roofing?
Bolt-on, yeah.
Bolt-on,
yeah.
Traditional.
Yeah.
Because you're an old-fashioned company, hasn't caught up with the latest trend.
Just see how it is.
Yeah, see, this is what happens when you sit up here. You get shit on by the monitor, right? It's really awful.
If it's just single units, we tend to finish the entire roof, including the solar panels. But if it's multi-unit homes, we tend to finish the entire roof on-site, also for warranty issues.
What kind of roofing material do you use on your?
GF.
There you go.
TPO.
Okay, so you got one more small step to make is just integrate that solar right with the roofing material.
Yeah, we already designed all of our homes to be like DOE zero energy ready. So it's like we're close, but it's kind of like you guys mentioned before. It'd be better if we could just offer the panels with it because we're
think about no drilling holes, no penetrations. I mean, it just sounds.
And we have more and more customers that actually opt in to just do the entire package, including battery packs, and they see the benefit there too. Like we've had plenty of stories from customers where the power went out in the neighborhood, except in their house.
I see a match here.
Yeah, and good for you for using the back, the TPO product. So this back sheet is TPO.
Oh, there you go.
So it's perfect, but TPO is a great waterproofer.
So we got an audience here, Chris, and we saw there were only 4 or 5 builders that even offer bolt-on solar, kind of what I'll call traditional solar.
Sure.
Nobody offering integrated solar. And you're a builder, you don't offer solar either. What keeps you from offering solar?
I don't know if we would ever offer bolt-on solar just because we don't want to deal with the warranty.
Yep.
Again, drilling holes, it's counterintuitive to building. In our market, there's not for us, there's not a lot of demand. The way we go about things is if one customer asks for it, okay, we'll figure out what to do or how to do it. We would pre-wire, and I'm not even sure if we've probably done a couple pre-wires just because someone's asked for it, but there's just not a lot of demand for it. I've talked to Scott. I've talked to some of the other solar guys around because I kind of know it's coming. As the note I made is the technology is getting better. I don't know, 10 years ago, could you have done this product with technology?
Probably not. It would have taken.
The technology is getting better, so you can now do a product like this. It can be more efficient, it's more cost effective.
Yeah.
So it's becoming more more mainstream. But for us, we don't really have anybody asking for it, at least for our product. So
and And you're North Carolina, correct?
We're in North Carolina, so we're very moderate temperature.
I know, but you think about what just happened in North Carolina, the power outages, and everybody lost all their, everything in the refrigerator, everything in their freezer. They were living uncomfortably for weeks in some cases, right? This is the perfect opportunity, right, to start storytelling, right? Explain to them how you can have energy independence. Explain to them you can have your own energy storage. Explain how you don't have to rely on the grid to do
Right.
that.
My boss just put in. I mean, we're in Charlotte. We weren't directly affected. Obviously, got the rains, but it's not too far away from where we are. But and my boss lost power for a day. And
But my guess is every single homeowner in North Carolina knows the story.
oh yeah. Well, I was just saying he lost power. He didn't. But he put a generator in 2 weeks later.
Yeah.
But if you had solar in the battery, and so that's
Generators are nasty. They don't work half the time.
it's a different way to go about having protection if you run out of power. And
What do you really think?
Yeah, I've had generators. I know all about generators.
Well, and the battery. I mean, you brought it up. We're a roofing company, but obviously this system is compatible with AC coupled batteries. So and that.
And we're going to have somebody in the later session. Decibel's going to be here. They're going to talk about one of the many different kind of battery systems that there are. So you'll hear more about different kinds of battery systems as well.
Because that technology is coming quick too. So pairing that with this is amazing.
So I go to the Consumer Electronics Show as media every year, and it's like, oh my God, there are like 80 domestic battery companies at the Consumer Electronics Show. I mean, every brand from every country in the world. So this is not a new, young, emerging technology anymore. It's just a pedestrian technology. They're just packaging lithium batteries in all kinds of different shapes and formats.
Yeah.
It's really more about the software and the app than it is about the battery. The batteries all come from the same few factories in the world.
Right.
There's not that many of them.
Yeah.
All right, well, we got about, 15 minutes left or something like that. So let's open it up to some questions. First of all, I want to get some audience participation going, but I got a few questions here. We talked earlier about kind of, codes going on steroids. And I'm going to kind of get to a controversial point here because I've been in the building industry a very long time. I ran the Home Building Industry Technology Consortium for 22 years. And, I would sit with Stuart Miller and Richard Dugas and all of those guys. And they would always fight every single building code. And by the way, I met with HBA as well, and every HBA in the country fights every single change to a building code. And I would have these discussions with them. I said, you know what? We're taking exactly the wrong stance. We should advocate for the highest, strictest building codes that are available out there to what our technology can build. And the reason, my rationale for that was, if we do that, then we'll be building a product that is so much better than what used and existing homes are, that we will differentiate and we'll be able to charge more for those products and we'll have better products. Instead of fighting it, going, no, we want to build the crappiest, cheapest, worst, most energy, hogging, homes that we possibly can by law, right? Why don't we actually turn it around the other way? And it seems like what's happened. Oh, go ahead.
So you brought up the folks about Richmond American Homes, but you also have, some Sumitomo and two other ones that have come in, and their building processes are
Very different.
entirely different than that. So that is, to your point, that is forcing the stewards of the world to say, hey,
change their
where are they at? And as so home buyer starts demanding that, then you get to where you're talking about. Sorry, I didn't steal your thought.
I got my introduction to the home building industry a long time ago, hence less hair and gray. But I was sent to Japan when I worked for General Motors. And it was a fascinating assignment. I was told I was sent over there to study the entire Japanese keiretsu system, all their suppliers and everything that they do. And we didn't start in automotive. We started in the loom works because Toyota actually started as a textile company. And that's their oldest industry, and they still are in it. They make textile machines. It was like, oh, that was really interesting. And they said, well, you have to understand that first before you'll ever understand the car industry. And then they said, now you got to understand our home building industry. So I got to get inside of the Toyota, which is one of Japan's largest home builders. Now, they do not build homes in the United States. They have not come to the United States, unlike Sekisui, Daiwa House, Sumitomo, et cetera. But talk about a different way to build a home. They're sold in malls. They're built in a factory in 3 days. And from the time they're built to the time you move in is 12 days. And they're completely factory tested, factory sealed, factory insulated. It's probably, it's more your world than anything.
I wish we could do it that fast. That's
And I have videos. I have all kinds of these videos showing a house, at 8 o'clock in the morning, there's nothing there. And at 3:30 in the afternoon, the house is finished. And it's just incredible. So, that world is coming. But what do we think about, we got all these new building codes out there. Are they good or are they bad?
Yes,
It depends how we embrace them, right?
right. I mean, with the energy stuff, the codes keep, going up. So Energy Star then has to go up to, be a little differentiating. So the energy codes, are good, but it does end up adding, costs. So there's a factor, involved in that.
Do you actively explain what it's going to cost to live in a used home in your area versus what it's cost to live in a new home in your area? Is that in your marketing material?
Not my world. I think we do. We probably should. That's probably something I need to, make a note and, and make sure. But that's part of, our HERS ratings are low and energy efficient, so it does lower the cost of, of operation.
Yep.
And with the HVAC and the insulation all combined, what it does, it makes the house more comfortable.
Yes.
More comfortable to live in. So we've had a couple clients, come in about the whole rule of thumb, every 500 square feet is a ton, ton of HVAC. I'm like, when's the last time you built a house? 20 years ago. I'm like, all right, we're different. And even now we've got a client coming in from Hendersonville, which is the mountains, and they're like, well, we need to add a dehumidifier to the house because your climate is so much more humid. I'm like, well, we're not that far away. But again, the HVAC is designed, the insulation's better, everything's better. So the house is just more comfortable. So you don't need some of that stuff because it's a system that builds in there. And then the codes play a part in that.
Yep. So another thing I thought was fascinating in this discussion, you brought it up, you talked about spray foam and you talked about the issues with supply chain and kind of as a builder, making sure that your strategies, you've hardened your supply chain. Because you talked about 2 components and 1 component comes from Asia. And if there is some kind of political disruption or war or whatever, you could suddenly
skyrocket up.
It could be, and then suddenly you've got to find a completely different system. That's something that I don't think most builders have contingency plans, looking at their supply chain, thinking about the geopolitical nature, right, of their reliance on where their materials come from and having alternative strategies.
Although the COVID time frame, our stuff's in the U.S. and Canada, recycled goods, all that kind. So it didn't really impact us, at my own personal industry. But there's every builder here that would say, holy crap, the stuff that came across the Pacific. I flew out of LAX, there's 120 container ships sitting out there. So yeah, they're much more aware of it today. But then you kind of slide into where we are, like, oh, hey, it's getting all better again. And then,
Are there any best practices that you share with the audience on how to think about your supply chain and how to harden it, so to speak, for our geopolitical kind of tensions and issues?
So, I have a regular rhythm with my core group of folks out there, but, when the harbor guys and ladies were going to go on strike, right away, hey, there's nothing we get that's going to impact us. If you're importing your countertops from Turkey or something, that's going to impact you. But for us, it wasn't. But you're able to address some of those kind of things. The Great Texas Freeze was another black swan type event. Every major Dow and those kind of plants and every feeder plant that made, citric acid and everything else froze to death.
2 weeks.
Or longer. Yeah, so that starts. So what is your backup play to that? Yes, we have contingency plans.
The question is,
and we have European stuff
what should
too.
a builder do? Is there some way that
Yeah, you
builders
should only do business with us because we didn't screw up anything.
I don't want to hear about the Texas freeze again. There's some things you just can't have a backup plan for. That affected, refrigerators, drywall, mud, paint, it'll affect almost everything in the entire house.
You could paint, as long as you painted in beige, you could do it, right? Yeah.
Right. For us, as a builder, is being able to have, I think, good systems and processes and communication with your vendors that can then maybe have contact with, here's what's going on, trying to stay ahead of it, people who might, warn you, I mean, like with the floods and all the disasters from the hurricanes and everything else, like, what's going to go up? Drywall? Is that, all the building materials that are going to be needed to rebuild, all right, we know there's probably going to be, or could be definitely a blip in things, at some point when that all comes together. So it's just being aware and being in contact with, your partners in your building process to.
You need to have a primary relationship with whatever that is.
Right.
But my advice is always it shouldn't be an exclusive relationship in a building material set. The roofing thing, I think you should give them a free, 100%. But
if we were going to,
but in my world, it's like, hey, let's stop around that 60% category, and then you have a secondary and a tertiary, or somebody you have done it with a couple times a year.
Yeah, I've worked in the home building industry for the last 22 years, and know almost all the production builders pretty intimately. Before that, I worked in the semiconductor industry and then the auto industry, and in both of those industries, they would have strategic sourcing plans. They would look at geopolitical tensions. They would look at, shortages. Are all of their supplies coming from specific geographies in the country? Are they susceptible to natural disasters, whether it be a Texas power outage or a hurricane or whatever? I mean, they would have plans for all of that. I don't know one builder I've ever met with that has ever talked to me about having any kind of supply chain resilience system. You ever met with that? Anybody here have a supply chain resilience map for your company? Know geopolitically what your risks are, geographically in the country what your risks are?
Yeah, but see, I don't know if a regular residential home builder can. I mean, if there's a problem with the Texas freeze, it affects everything. I mean, I can't go to another vendor, to get different paint because it affects everything.
But I'll tell you, in the auto industry, you would have already had 2 vendors certified, and you'd actually be using 2 vendors for that exact reason, so that you would just seamlessly shift from one to the other. It happens all the time.
Well,
and you would never shut down an auto.
Supplier side, it became more of a higher than the vendor. Like the electrician couldn't get 400 amp sub panels because there's 2 companies in America that make them. So that's where I think the issue with some of the building is sometimes it's all coming from just not very many places. So when it trickles down, I can't just go together.
So then you look at what's the inventory level within your supply chain.
Right.
And I don't know many builders that even track inventory level within their supply chain.
No, I would definitely not.
Right? You take great, you use whatever, Schneider, service panels.
But we are, I think, a little bit more communication with our electrician, our plumbers, our vendors, like just
Post-COVID.
What's that?
Post-COVID.
Yeah, post-COVID. Yeah, COVID, you dealt with all the crap. We can't get anything.
So this is one of the positive benefits of COVID. We were really excited. We finally took some of this stuff more seriously.
I think you just become more aware.
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of an example right now. Somebody, there's a tub that had an issue. Like, okay, is that a major supply chain issue? No, it's just one thing. The one machine broke down, and we're back on track. But it sort of makes you hyper aware.
Yes.
Of are you having a supply chain issue, or is this just a normal?
Right.
I'm curious, is it easier for you to think about supply chain being a modular in a factory setting where potentially you could have that extra, components sitting around?
We tend to have, for most of our materials, stuff in stock, or then essentially everything that you do not see in the home has its appropriate substitution around, just in case we run into supply chain issues. We can switch at the.
What you're saying is you run your company more like an actual manufacturer.
It doesn't mean that we don't run into.
GAF does. I guarantee you GAF does that.
That's why we manufacture everything.
Somebody in GAF is really worried about global issues and supply chain and inventory throughout the supply chain and managing that and securing it to make sure that there's no shutdown.
Correct.
And that's a kind of a manufacturer thing. But in housing, we tend not to think that way.
I think we just become more aware of it. So we have the communication, like with our window company, same thing. Like they used to source things, and now they're having more stock of things. So I think that's where the supply chain is the manufacturer side. Just being able to produce better, having their raw materials to be able to produce it to the home builders.
So you guys have been out there listening. You got to have a question. Each one of you tables got to come up with some idea, question. Or it could just be a comment about what we're talking about. You can say that moderator is really weird. You know, maybe we should improve the moderation here. What do we got out there? Any questions for the guy? Here we go. You bet. Did everybody hear that? What he was basically saying is one of the challenges of our industry is that we don't buy direct, unlike most manufacturing industries would actually buy direct from the other manufacturers. We buy through lots of different distributors, and because of that, we don't necessarily have the visibility or the power, let's say, the negotiating power to require certain inventory levels to be stocked. You know, if you're going to a Ferguson, you really have the ability to say, no, you need to stock 23 tubs, because, you know, we got that.
Yeah,
Other question.
I'd say that I work with Scott. Scott, great job, and such information, great information. But there are a couple of things. I've been reading some of these master supply agreements from builders, and I will tell you that they've gotten a lot better in the contracts. In particular, some of the contracts I've recently signed, they have requirements that you have certain inventory on hand. And when you're dealing with some of the larger builders, the requirement is if they will have product, and that product has to last a certain duration. Second thing I've seen in some of the contracts, which I'm happy to say, is that they want to understand every component part within your supply chain. And to the extent, is there anything that can be substituted? So you're seeing a lot more. So the good news is that I think because of COVID, a lot of that language I'm seeing that's being added. I always run the joke that the builders all got together in a weekend in an island, came up with the most challenging contract and made everybody else sign it. I'm being facetious. And then the other thing, Scott, I just want to add to what you were saying. When you think about rack-mounted solar, and you were talking earlier about putting all these holes and penetrating your roofs, there's another advantage of a building integrated product. Everyone's focused on reducing their cost of goods sold, et cetera. The product that we have, which you guys will see, it actually takes the place of the shingle. So to the extent we cover 10 squares or 5 squares or whatever that is, and if you do third-party financing, that's money that's not coming out of your pocket. That's money that we're financing. So there's like immediate savings. So, but this is great. I loved all the stuff I learned about Johns Manville. This is super.
Yeah, I mean, what you're really saying is it's not a redundant system, right? It's an optimized system, right? I always found it weird. Is you got all this beautiful roofing sitting underneath all my solar panels. It's never seen anything at all. But I spent the money for it, and then you're buying this whole thing that sits, up on top of it as well.
And I'm going to buy you lunch when we go see Kevin Clinton.
Okay. All right. Well, I want first of all to thank all of our panelists up here. They take their time to come here, participate. They have to put up with me asking them for the presentation materials and bugging them about all that kind of stuff ahead of time. So if we could just give them a quick round of applause and thank them. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you very much.